It definitely feels like you're cutting out. Hello, everybody. Oh my goodness. Okay. Better?
All right.
Can you hear
Yes.
me? Good?
Yeah, because
Okay.
I had a few people on my end. I can hear you fine. Yeah. Can you hear me fine?
I can hear you fine. I think we're all good.
Okay.
Hello, everyone.
Yeah. Uh,
So fun. I was talking to
there is a
Krista
standing
earlier
joke.
today. Oh, what?
You were. Hello, Krista. I mean, she's not here right now, but like, hi
No.
in between space and time.
Well, I was talking to Krista earlier today because I don't go live all that often. And so she was like, "Oh, you're going live with Rebekah. That'll be fun." I was like, "Yeah, I feel like I need the body doubling a little bit to like be on live easier. So I appreciate this so much. It's nice to get to talk to you like while this happens."
Yes. And I know a lot of my dog says hi. Mira
Hi,
says hi, everybody.
Mira.
We've been blessed by a sentient potato today.
Oh, look at
But
her. So sweet.
yeah, she's like, "You're not loving me enough. Why?" Oh my goodness. So, I wanted to, because what I loved was I had a number of people who followed me on my comment section being like, "Oh my God, I love Emily." And I was like, well, obviously, like, duh. But for anybody out there who may not know who you are, can you tell my people who you are and what you do?
Totally. And it's great because I had like vice versa for you. So I love this. It's the same across the board, which is so funny. Anytime I talk about ghosts, people are always like, "Well, do you know Rebekah the Ghost Guide?" I'm like, I do, as a matter of fact. Yeah, we kind of sharing stuff. Yeah, so for all of those who don't know me, hello. Nice to meet you. I'm Emily, or Liker of Words. I am an active psychic medium channel. I really focus on communicating with spirit guides and doing block pulling and releasing, especially for people who are creative. So I have a huge emphasis on helping people to write and be authors and create things. I have different programs for that, but also just doing soul readings and tuning into people's guides, giving people guidance in that space. Lots of my own stuff on the same kind of wavelength of Rebekah as well. I just deal with less spirits that are hanging around. They still come in, but just less in that way, and more of like, hey, let's talk to this deity or this random guide that you have. That kind of like very more out there kind of spiritual stuff. Oh,
Yes.
thank you guys. You're so sweet. I love you all too. I'm sure you feel like this sentiment as well, but I'm always so incredibly honored that we exist in this time period where we can talk about this stuff and it helps people. Like, it's
Yeah.
mind blowing to me on a daily basis.
And like, we're not being burned at the stake for it. That's cool. Yeah.
Very cool. It's not even like I'm getting like, I don't even feel like I get consistent hate. It's always more often than not just like love and like appreciation, and it's so beautiful because genuinely my whole goal always is to just make sure everyone knows how magical they are. And so anytime I feel like I'm helping in that capacity, I'm like, wow, people listen. This is so neat. Like, thank you for like being here and letting us talk and have this space when even 10 years ago or 15 years ago we didn't have this.
Yeah. And by the way, I'm gonna brag on you for a moment because so I met you because you reached out to me to be on your podcast, Perceptionist
Yeah.
Anonymous.
Mm-hmm.
And afterwards I was like, well, I love this person. I'm gonna do like the deep dive on your page. And that was after doing more of a deep dive on your like podcast. And now I'm catching up on your podcast with Krista Lynn too. So
Oh.
I took your course. It's the 7-day activation course for like better activating channel stuff. And I'm telling you, like, it changed my life. The most simple thing of claiming my energetic field. And this is something that I work with others now too. And I always credit you to this because I'm always like, please go love on Emily. It is so simple to just be like, hi, this field is mine. And I'm just removing what's not mine. But the fact that so many people never think to do that, it's so simple. It hurts. Like, it hurts how simple it is. But that was just one day of your 7-day activation course. And then I also am a part of your fall or autumn series of 2021 Forgotten Storytellers, which, by the way, everybody, draft 1 of the book between Rupert and George and my past life situation is written, and I'm going to be starting on draft 2 this month. I'm very excited about it. So a lot of you have signed up for my newsletter already on my website. Keep doing that. That really makes me feel better to know that people are still interested. But I want to credit you for that encouragement, as well as you have this phenomenal way of taking really difficult things to understand and making them really easy to understand. And I've always appreciated that.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate it. Also, I'm so excited about your book because I got to be like an active part of seeing you go through the creation process, and I can't wait to read it. And I am still excited about it. So if you ever need like encouragement, just text me and I'll be like, you're doing so amazing. I can't wait to read it. So you just know that it's there. But thank you. And I'm so glad that that's helped you. That was my biggest thing. So after I left my abusive relationship way back at like when I was like 21. My biggest thing was every healing resource or spiritual resource always made everything like super overcomplicated. And I couldn't handle that. It would cause me to have massive anxiety. So I literally stated to my guides, like, if unless it's easy, I'm not going to do it. So you got to make it easy for me. And that's how this all came together. So to hear that it helps others is really awesome, because it was a straight demand from me to my guides of this is how it needs to be. And it has been. I mean, they've come through, so go guides on that. There's things that's been confusing, but yeah, just claiming your energy field, doing clearings like that is so simple, but it is life-changing on a huge way.
Yes. And I always describe it like when I talk to people about meditation, how there are many different kinds of meditation, how to center and balance. The meditations that drive me mad are when you first start them and it says, clear your mind. And I'm always like, no. That's what I'm meditating for. You know, so when you're talking about like,
it's not just the skill everyone has.
So when you talk about like needing the easy way and like something easier to understand, that's exactly it. It's like, so it's getting, it's making it more attainable rather than being like, clear your mind, because everybody knows how to clear their mind, like at any given, exactly. So yes.
Yeah. Okay. I'm really glad it helps. I really am, because that was the other thing too. People do the same thing with like healing, right? Like anytime anyone's healing from anything, most of the language, and being a writer myself, I also am just like a diction nerd. Like I love when the language people use and why they use specific words, and like it has so much connotation, and I can see energy with my physical eyes, so it always like matters to me. But if you like look at the diction a lot of people are using when they're talking about healing journeys, they're using like things along the line of like, oh, it'll be hard, but it'll be worth it. Or like, you can make it through, things like that, where it's like, yeah, healing can be difficult, but maybe it's not, and let's make it easier. For it's the same reason as psychic stuff. It's like, oh, it's so, it'll be a challenge to open this up, or sit down and meditate even though it's hard. And it's like, well, what if we just stop saying that and like let it be easy for a minute and then just give it a shot?
Yeah.
Which is half the battle, like genuinely. But yes, I completely agree with those meditations. They're like, clear your mind, and then you sit there and you're like, sweet, now I don't even know what I'm supposed to be paying attention to.
Oh my goodness. So, okay. Sorry, go on.
So really quick, just answering the question of the person who asked in the comments. So my podcast is called The Alchemist Inkwell. And that's the one I run with Crystal Lynn, the real Crystal Lynn, who's our astrologer friend, who's amazing. So
yes.
To answer that really quick, as we pop up.
So somebody asked on my live, it's like, what is this live about? So
good question.
Which I'm like, I mean, obviously I just wanted to give you a phone call in front of like however many hundred people right now. No. I mean I would, but no. To get to it, what I love is I'd like to like ask you more questions on how you channel, of course, your psychic abilities, for my folks to know. And I also find it fascinating that we both regularly connect with spirits. And just like you can connect to ghosts, I connect to spirit guides. And of course, both of us work with energy and all the stuff in between. And I thought it would be awesome for us to converse more on the energetic differences between when you have like a guide and when you like have a rando ghost, like you said, you were at an Airbnb or whatever, and like random ghost shows up, and like how it feels different.
Yep.
and also how to perceive that. So that was a lot of questions at once.
No, I'm
Where
so
to
down. This is an
start.
amazing dialogue. Yeah.
So okay, how about
Yeah.
this? We'll start with I just for my folks to know, if you could share your psychic senses, like your go-to psychic senses, and then I'll share mine, and then we can go into how to perceive that energy. Does that work for you?
Totally. That sounds great. Love it. So yeah, for everyone, everyone has psychic abilities. I always just want to start that off before I list mine, because I never want it to feel like, oh, I wish I had those. Everyone has psychic abilities, period. Sometimes they're muddied up, sometimes they're blocked, sometimes they need practice, sometimes you're not entirely using the right senses in order to access them, but everybody has them. So I never want to just be like, these are mine, you don't get them and they're just mine. Like, nope, this is just the combination cocktail that I use. So out of the 8 clair senses, so the psychic senses, which I have a ton of information about on my page if you guys want to look there, I am super claircognizant heavy. That it comes in a lot. So basically I just know things. And then I'm very clairvoyant as well. So sometimes I actually struggle getting names a lot of the time, because a lot of the times guides or spirits or deities, etc., will just send me an image. And unless it's an incredibly recognizable image, it's incredibly hard for me to be like, I don't think your name is Cucumber. I see that you're sending me one, but I don't think that's actually your name. Do we want to try again? So that is the other one I use. I have a decent amount of clairaudience that'll come through. That is more in my like mind's ear than it is with my physical ears. And I kind of use like a cocktail blend of those things. So I'll just know something that's then validated by an image that I then hear the next part of. So it's kind of, it's not like one at a time. And then I get a lot of validation through clairsentience, so with my physical body. But yeah, what about yours?
Yes. Also, whenever I find someone who's clairaudient, even if it's on a more internal sense, because I know Rupert wants to visit you at some point, and we've talked
I'm
about
so
that.
excited.
Though for those, like, I've had friends who have met him, and basically he has learned how to follow the energy out to them. So like I can like be talking to them and I'll be like, all right, I'm thinking about him, I'm connecting with him, and boop, there he goes. But I'm always like nervous because I'm doing these reenactments and I'm not getting a Welsh accent right, because my clairaudience is more internal as well. It's not quite with my physical ears, and I'm growing it. I'm really working on it. So whenever somebody meets him, I'm always like, "So what did you think? How off was I?"
You know what's funny? I get accents from guides and from spirits. They do have accents, guys. Sometimes they're very otherworldly accents too that you cannot identify. I'm just like, whoa, they speak with an accent. But when I'm doing like people's past loved ones, oftentimes their accent will come through. But it's often hard to distinguish what accent it is. With one exception, when Russian people come through, I have no issue. I know exactly what type of like it. Russian accents are so incredibly strong. It's hilarious.
Yep. I love that. And that's the funny thing too. It's like with psychic senses, you never really know what's going to come through, and it's like, ah, that is the clear thing. It is Russian, like something like that. That was like with Jimothy. I was like, I found out that he's actually from the county below mine where I grew up. So when I heard Randolph County, North Carolina, I was like, oh, I know what that sounds like. I know what that accent sounds like. But also I was like, but I was also hearing it in my head. Like it sounded like home. And I was just like, ah, you, sir, there we go.
Mm-hmm.
Now, to answer your question in response, so
Yeah.
with my clear senses, when I was very young, I was clairvoyant with like my physical eyes. And it scared me so much that I actually turned it off because I didn't understand what was going on. It didn't feel like I could go to anybody about it. I was very religious household, and that was very no. So I managed to block that with myself. And as I started to open up at different times in my life, I could sometimes see with my physical eyes, but then the mental imagery was very, very strong. So it's like that inward mind's eye clairvoyance, and coming back. Like the more that I embrace that, the more I'm not afraid of it, the more I'm just like, I'm ready for this. I am seeing things more clearly with my eyes, which is exciting. So clairvoyance, claircognizance. I'll also say with claircognizance, that and the kind of like clairemotive on picking up on the emotions. One of the things, and I'm going to go back to the whole clearing of the energetic field, it
Hmm.
helped with my anxiety so much because I didn't realize how much of everything else I was picking up on that wasn't me. Like the conversations, the ideas, the feelings, the this, the that. And now all I have to do is be like, anything that's not mine has to go. And I'm like, oh, huh, that's not me. I
It's
can
like
feel
maybe I
that,
have
but
way
it's
less
not mine.
social anxiety than I thought. Like,
Right. So
yeah,
yeah, the clear cognizance too. It's weird to just know things sometimes. Like it's hard to explain, and the only way to really figure that out is to try and to see what darts
yeah.
kind of hit on what is correct.
Yeah,
But yeah, I
claircognizance is one of the strongest psychic abilities. Like, not that any of the senses are weak, they're not. All of them can be really strong. But when you have claircognizance, it can be really overwhelming, which is why I say it's one of the strongest. Like, when you have it, it's kind of like a bulldozer sometimes, where you're just like, okay, I just know stuff, and now I got to do something with it. I always recommend for developing that sense, it's incredibly helpful to either say the things that you just know out loud or write them down, because the way our human brain likes things, it either likes to know where stuff comes from, like an image or a sound, or it likes to create things with the stuff it knows. So if you
mhm,
create something with the stuff it knows, like a word that comes out of your mouth or a written document, then our brain likes to validate that a lot more. So it'll come
mhm.
through a lot easier. And so it's less of hitting darts if you open it up more gradually like that, because it very much can feel that way of, oh, I'm just taking swings at balls now and hopefully something hits. And then more often than not it does, and you're like, oh my gosh, that worked. Which yeah, that's claircognizance for you. There's no proof, there's no anything like that until you've said it, and then you get the proof after the fact, as opposed to before, which is like the image or the sound or even the physical feeling or the emotional feeling, etc.
And I'll say too, just opening up in general, whether it's journaling or I've talked with some people about using art or music or just something
Mm-hmm.
to get it out there. Cause I I've grown a lot in the last 2 years alone. And I owe really a lot of that to people's fascination with me really retelling these stories. Because for me, if I'm talking with a spirit, I usually don't think two things about it. I'm just like, oh yeah, some guy walked me home last night. Like that was cool. um, but since I started writing them down, more and more and more information came back, but also my abilities started to just grow and grow and grow because I was consciously paying attention to the signs that I was receiving. And now so much has happened. So I feel like the universe has been like, you figured it out. Congratulations. Here you go.
Yep. Yes, basically, I completely agree with that. Even just having your own journal where you can like let those out and read them back later, super essential. If you're not like wanting to share your journey with others, because sometimes it can be incredibly personal and really vulnerable. Like Rebekah and I've been doing this for years and gotten to this point of being able to share super openly. Like I just same as her, since I was itty bitty, I've been able to do this stuff. And even when I blocked it out, I still was doing it. I just wasn't acknowledging that I was doing it, so that I didn't have to be afraid of the fact that I was doing it. Uh, so that's basically what happened. But that's not everybody's space. And even for me, it took, at least 6 years before I was of like actively getting back into practice, acknowledging it, before I was like comfortable to share, hey, I can do readings for this, or hey, your guide says this, that kind of thing, because it's a journey to get there. But having some sort of record for yourself, I even have it's like a magical moments book journal where I just straight down write magical things that have happened to me. Like that's it, nothing else, just the magic stuff. Just so I can have a record to look back on. And then sometimes I'll be like, oh yeah, I forgot I had that validation. Or I did see that like 111 at that time, and whatever it is.
Yeah, I talk to people all the time who are having things happen, or when we're talking about the clear senses, some people don't know what they have. And so my
Mm-hmm.
way of looking into things is to ask questions of like, have you had this happen? Like, has this happened? Like, or if you've had an experience, how did that work? Did you hear it? Did you see it? Did you feel it? Um,
Yeah.
and that's the thing. A lot of people don't realize that they have these sorts of abilities, but then it's almost like if you just give them a little bit of a nudge and be like, what if I told you you did? And what if you just started to pay attention to them and maybe write them down every now and then look back? Just just an idea.
Yeah. Well, and the cool thing is whatever senses you have, once you establish what senses you have, then it's really easy to identify what type of gifts you want to use. Because if you feel really drawn to talking to ghosts, that's obviously where you should go with those senses. If you feel really drawn to like astral projection or working with deities or whatever it is in that space, like use your senses to do that. Like you get to expand from there. So it's less about figuring out what type of gifts you have and more of like what senses and then where do you want to put them. It's like way more freeing than the like pigeonhole of you just tell the future. Like nope.
Oh my goodness, that pigeonhole is real though. People who are like, oh, you're a psychic, what am I going to do in 5 minutes? I'm like, I don't care.
Like, yeah. Yes. Also, the future is so mutable too. So I'm like, I could, if I looked at the energy and told you, you can manifest whatever you want to happen anyway. So like, regardless of what I said, like it's your future. So you get to change that. I can give you an energetic outlook of what the energy looks like that I know is hitting you from collective, but I can't tell you what you're going to do because you can change that because it's your life, you know?
Yeah. So,
yeah.
Okay, segue. When
Good
you, okay, I'm curious about how you see, essentially. Like we've talked about the clairsenses. Let's say you are sitting down with somebody who's booked a time with you, either for a block removal or just general information. When you are like sitting with their energy, how does that work for you?
It's actually really, really clear, which is kind of fun. So in my soul readings, which is kind of, I always say it's a combo, like come with questions, but your guides are going to give me whatever they'd like to give me. I'll sit down first. I always clear the energy and like hold boundaries around the space. So I know it's okay. It's kind of hard to explain because it makes me sound like I have way too much going on in my brain, but I do have way too much going on in my brain, but this is how it works. So I have different rooms in my mind for different types of channeling. So when I come into a reading with someone, etc., I will open up the room for me to sense their energy, their higher self, and their spirit guides. Those rooms remain kind of open throughout the entire reading. They're not exactly rooms, but for lack of a better term, that's what it looks like. Now, their guides pretty much always pop through immediately. They're always who I connect with first and easiest, so I always ask them to come through immediately. Their energy field I can see both in my mind's eye and with my physical eyes. So places where they're holding blocks, their guides just kind of validate where I'm sensing blocked energy, where I'm sensing like, whoa, there's low vibration there, what's going on. They validate that, and that's where the block pulling tends to come in very strongly. Now I have other rooms too that I can choose to open if a client asks. So for example, past loved ones, past lives, those kind of things. If people want me to tune into those, I will, but I don't necessarily do it unless the guides immediately point out like, we need this room open, or the client is like, hey, can you connect with like my grandpa Bill? And I'll be like, oh, sure, I'll open the room and invite them to come in so that they can talk to me there. So for me, it's kind of like this very odd file organization system. So when I'm sitting there, the guides will come through. I usually see them and get just knowing from them immediately right off the bat. That's where we'll go. Whether the client has questions that I can like ask the guides directly for them, or if the guides have like a list of things that they need to immediately say right off the bat, that's kind of where I let it open and kind of go from that space. And then I hear things for validation purposes most often.
I love this because some of the things that you're doing are the things that I'm doing when I'm talking to somebody. And there's a little bit of difference too. So when basically when I connect with somebody's energy, and sometimes like I will see them almost like they have an orbit, like they will have a spirit guide who's close by, or maybe a number of guides, and then there are different beings in their orbit essentially. Like the other day I was connecting with someone and they were just kind of wondering like who's around me, like past loved ones, spirit guides, whatever. I usually pick up on the spirit guide first, and they're usually the one to be like, hi, you can talk to other people or not. The other day though, a spirit guide sent out the person's past dog, and it was like a test. The dog, like I see this dog, I'm describing the dog, and I was just like, were you looking to connect with this dog today? And she was like, no, but I miss them so much. And I said, okay, great. Well, great. And then after like the dog has been connected, and it's kind of like dog is looking at me like, hi, like ears up, that kind of thing. And then the spirit guide comes forward, and she was like, that was a test. You passed it. I'm like, okay, thanks.
No, sometimes they are so like that. Sometimes they'll be like, oh, you want my name? It's, and you're like, are you kidding me right now? Like, you were this close to saying it. And they're like, we'll tell you what, like, if you get the next 3 things right that I'm saying, I'll tell you your name. And like, it does happen that way for sure. And that's hilarious with the dog, though. That makes a lot of sense. I've had that happen a couple times recently too with animals, which is kind of interesting. When you said that, I was like, really? Because it's not happened a whole bunch before. But over the last like month or so, a couple different times when people have been like, oh, is my mom there, or that kind of thing, and I could let them into the room, they'll come with an animal. One time it was like a cat on their lap, and I was like, does that apply to you, or does she just really like her cat? Like, I got nothing else, but she has the cat there, and she's like, oh my gosh, yeah, that's my childhood cat, or whatever it is. So it's interesting it's been happening to you too. So that must be kind of a theme in their dimension. I'll have to channel on a little bit for right now.
Ooh, yes. I think that'd be a fascinating video as well. It's like, why do pets sometimes present themselves before a guide or a past loved one? Like, what does that mean? It almost seems like to me it's, for some people, maybe that's the key to get them to loosen up a little bit more. It's not intimidating. It's
No,
like, oh, but that's my childhood dog, or that's my cat, that kind of thing.
I think sometimes too, the animal is really protective, like not necessarily aggressively protective like we think of protective, but they want to come and like essentially sniff out your energy and be like, why are you in my person's space exactly? Oh, okay, you're fine. Like, it's almost like an approval from them lets you have access to everybody else, but they're like very protective, which I think is really sweet.
Yeah. Okay, I get this a lot from people when just talking about ghosts, and I'm curious about your perspective on this as well. So when I am connecting with a ghost, and let's even say that they have more awareness. So we're not talking about just a residual energy that's repeating itself. We're talking about a spirit that has a portion of their mind at least, so you can actually carry on a conversation. Yeah. When I ask a name, sometimes it is fuzzy. Like, I'll use Molly as an example. So Molly at the coffee shop, when she first presented herself, she was like, my name's Molly. That's not my God-given name. And I was just like, one, I'm going to call you whatever you want me to call you, because I mean, you present as ever you want. Though I had people being like, oh, but what's her actual name? And I think for a little while she was having trouble remembering it, because she remembered her occupation. She remembered characteristics about herself. She remembered what she wore. But I have found this with a number of spirits where they give a name that seems right, but sometimes I will find later that they will actually have remembered their name or something like that. And I know on as far as spirit guides are concerned, they seem to be not so preoccupied with the names. And I'm going to leave it off at that, if you can take that and explain that to us all.
Yes is the like moral of that story. Yes is like the best answer I have for like all of that. Yes, sometimes ghosts are like, this is my name and I know what it is. This is the only thing I'm clinging to. Sometimes they're like, this is the name I picked because I like that person's name and now it's mine. And they'll come through that until they remember their name, because that does happen, especially if you share energy with the spirit, kind of like you do with like Rupert and Jimothy and stuff. They become more awake, and because they have more memory and that kind of thing. Spirit guides are genuinely a mixed bag. Some of them don't have a name, or they don't want to tell you their name, or they really could care less if you use a name or not. They just want to be called my protector or spiritual guardian or whatever name you pick. They really could not give less of a shit. Some guides are genuinely like that. Some guides will give you a name they would like you specifically to call them. No one else gets to call them that name. It is not their actual name. It is the name they picked for you to call them, which is super important. And they tend to get kind of persnickety a little bit when those kind of guides come in. They're like, no, this is what it is. That's what they can call me. And they're very clear about it. Other guides will give you their name. I've had one time I was channeling this guide for someone, and I'll never forget him because he was hilarious. He was equal parts an alchemist and a like papal scholar in like the Vatican. So he would like dabble in alchemy on the side, and then was like papal. It was really hilarious. So when he gave me his name, he gave me like all 6 of his like official Italian names, like in order. And I was like, okay, this is going to be a lot for the person you're a guide for, but I guess if you really want him to know all your names, like here we go. Because this was a client's guide, so I'm not going to tell you all of his names, but that was all of his names in a row, and it was like the third at the end. I'm like, of course you're a third, because of that makes sense. So sometimes they're really long and in depth. Sometimes guides give you the name that they've incarnated on planet before with you with, so you feel more familiarity, even though you guys aren't incarnated now together. Because sometimes guides have incarnated with you previously. Sometimes guides have never incarnated with you, and they're a deity, and they tell you they're a deity right off the top, and they're here to help. They're only here to help with these 3 things, and they'll pop in and out, but this is their name, and they're very clear. Overall, if I had to put my finger on it, most guides don't care. If you really want a name and they're not giving it to you, call them whatever the hell you'd like to call them. If they don't like it, they will correct you. I literally had a guide I called Banana Hammock for like 3 weeks until Banana Hammock told me his actual name. And then I was like, thank you. Like, I had to give you this ridiculous nickname to get you to actually tell me your name. Which it was not a big name to tell, but I was just like, I want a name. I know you want me to have a name. You're just playing coy with me. So this is your name until you tell me otherwise. But overall, naming at the core of it is a very earth plane convention. Energetic signature is a lot of what guides and higher beings go off of, which is more unique than a name kind of ever could be. That being said, we all do have like sacred soul names, which can sometimes be really fun to find out, which is kind of like your higher self name, usually that we chose for ourselves. And it's sometimes really challenging to kind of figure that one out, or you really have to go with your gut and be very open with that in yourself. Sometimes it's in a language that we don't even speak on planet. So it's a light language name that you just have to shape your mouth around. So we do all have those. It's just not as often something that we share with others as we do with our names here on planet. Does that make sense?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
I mean, it makes sense to me. I have 2 examples to give based off of some of the things that you said. One, my sister's guide, I finally read her because like my sister was finally like, you kind of do this thing. And I'm like, yeah. And she's like, well, what do you think? And I'm like, you're asking me to do this after dinner? Okay, let's go. So with her guide, the guide was presenting as like the life that they just saw themselves as, like they were proud of it. But then the name that was attributed was a name that my sister knew her as like 2 or 3 lifetimes ago. So it was the presenting face and then it was the name. So that was interesting. And that's kind of how it is, because on guide level, I mean, they have the awareness of their past lives. They have the awareness of how they knew you, how many times, you know, like there's so much more awareness that's going on. And then the other story, one of my guides, like my main guide more recently, she, her name, I've heard it jumbled. It's almost like it comes through a frequency of like, yeah, sure, try that. And then I'll say it and she'll just be like, no. I'm like, okay, well, how about this? And she's like, keep trying. Yeah, just keep trying on that one. Like, what I love about her is there have been times in my life when I've needed a guide to, you know, come forward more strongly and be like, don't do the thing. What I love with her is she's more like, here's a long leash. And I'm like, okay. Like, there were times on the ghost tour where I'd be like, oh, hey, should I go up to Gallows Hill tonight? Like, I don't know. I'm getting a weird vibe from it. And she'd be like, I don't know. Should you? And I'd just be like, I mean, we've already made it up 5 blocks. So I feel like we could go like another quarter block. And she'd be like, I don't know. Should you? And I'd just be like, I think I will. And she's like, I don't know if you should. Do you want to?
She's like, I'll still be here when you eat your words, but I'm just going to give you the opportunity to serve yourself this meal. So like,
right. And her purpose, I know her purpose for me is I needed to have more confidence in my own ability to trust myself. You know, like I oftentimes can find the answer if I just simply ask myself the right question. But, you know, her purpose, so I'd be like, can't you just tell me not to go? Can you just tell me not to go? And she would just be like, how about you tell yourself not to go if you're feeling like you shouldn't? I mean, I don't know, maybe. Just, that's it. So yeah, that's guide stuff.
It's crazy too, because I feel like there's so many misconceptions about spirit guides out there, because some of them are very like that. They're like, well, I'm here to have you watch your intuition completely go wild, and I'm just here to let you know that I'm here to be here for you when it goes wild. And then other guides are like, don't do that, whack. And you're just like, okay, sorry, I won't do that. Thank you for like validating that for me. But oftentimes, like we have some guides that are with us 24/7 since we came on planet. We have some guides that come in and give us 3 messages and that's it, and they will never come back again. We have some guides that pop in now that we're 38 and now that we need them for whatever reason we decided before we came on planet. So it is, you do have a group, a collection of guides. They do shift and change more often than you think. So when you say main guide, like I have 3 main guides that I know are going to be with me 24/7 all the time forever. I'm incredibly thankful to them. And also just they give me a lot of grace, so thank you. But you know, there is that kind of, there's stability, and then there also is ones that are just like, hey, you just really need to know this one thing. Okay, bye. And you're like, awesome. Thanks for that, I guess.
Yeah. I know with who I was referring to before, more recently with Rupert hanging around more, I've noticed that she wasn't as close. Like she's still there with if ever I need to be like, hey, can we talk about something? Hey, can we vibe? You know, something like that. And I noticed that she wasn't, you know, just there so much anymore. So I like tapped in with her the other day and I was like, hey, are we good? Like, did I do something? And she's like, no, you've been making better decisions.
Mm-hmm.
Was like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, so we're good. She's like, yeah, I'm basically vacationing. She showed me like she has like this castle that she lived in at some point when she was here on Earth, and she's like, I'm overlooking my lake. And I was like, great. That sounds wonderful.
Appreciate it.
And that's the thing.
I
She
had
was
a
just like,
very
nah,
similar experience recently.
really?
Yeah, so my guide Hope is my main protector guide. I've shared a bunch of stories about her before.
Mhm.
She comes through most strongly, but for like the last like year, I've been like, where are you? Like, this is weird. And she'll come in and out, but she's not as strong. Like, she can manipulate things and like make candles go out and turn on lights. Like, she's very, very strong presence. And I was like, where have you been? And she kept just being like, you'll know in a minute. You'll know in a minute. And I'm like, okay. And then when we had our like sewer plumbing issue situation happening, I was like, oh my God, because we didn't smell it. There was no way for us to know. It was like a discovery by the plumber. It was this whole thing. And he was like, how have you not been affected by this? And I was like, I have one reason that we would not have been affected by this. And so when it got fixed, she like came back full force. And I was like, oh my God, you were spending all of your effort protecting us from the physical harm that was going to be like fall against us. Like the plumbers were astonished that that was happening. Like, that we had nothing wrong, like no, we didn't even notice because she was literally protecting it. Like, and that's how it can happen sometimes. You're like, where did you go? They did not go. They will still be there, but they just had something else they had to do.
That's what I tell people, even when listening to either their guides or their higher self or their intuition. And I use the example of, oh, say you're on a highway and for whatever reason you decide or you feel like you should not exit when you're supposed to and take the exit, you know, like the next one up or the first one before it. And I tell people, I'm like, you know what? You may not ever know why you felt that. But if you get to where you need to go safely, understand that there was a reason behind that. And I feel
Yeah.
like that's how guides work. I mean, there's this whole world dimension, whatever you want to call it, that we in the physical as single people will never be able to fully understand all the things that are happening around. So it's just kind of like sometimes it's the, hey, are we good? Okay, we're good. And that's got to be enough.
Yeah. That being said, though, for all of you who are like starting to communicate with your guides, that kind of thing, you can ask them for things. Like, it's not some like omnipotent, like, oh, hopefully, like if they give me advice, I have to always take it, that kind of thing. You can be like, why? If there's something that comes up that you're like, that feels weird, don't know if I want to take that. Why? I mean, like it can be something small, like my guide's telling me to get a hairbrush at the store, and then I didn't get one, and my hairbrush broke that night, and they laughed their asses off, which is fair because I was just like, no, I don't want to. I have one at home. It's wasteful, and they were like, you should get it. You should get the thing. And I'm like, no. But you have that freedom still. Like they're there to help you and navigate it, and they're gonna help you get to the places you need to be and be in your most alignment and all that stuff, regardless of the choices you make. Like they have a goal that you're steering you towards, but you can question them, you can ask them things. If you listen to them and did the thing they said, and then you like want to know why you need to listen to them, like you can ask. They'll give you validation.
Mm-hmm. I would say, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, I feel like for those, because I get some questions being like, how do I know it's my guide? Like, is it an evil force or something like that? I would say that, at least in my experience, and I'm still growing with all of this, it's almost as if guides will give enough of a leash or a tether in order for you to make the decision to have your own choice. Whereas if something is truly malevolent or whatever you want to call it, they're going to try and force choices or make you feel small or, embarrassed, or just, bring you to that kind of like lower vibrational state. Would you kind of agree with that?
100%. A guide is there to help you work through your life and your choices and your decisions. It's not to take away your choice or to make you feel fear or make you feel any of these like denser emotions or make you feel like you have to make a choice or something bad is going to happen. Like, that is not guide energy. Sometimes they'll be like, no, don't do that. And you'll see the smack and you'll be like, I'm going to do it anyway. And something happens. They'll be like, told you. And you're like, okay. But most of the, like, that's how guides operate. They are operating on a essentially spiritual contract you made with them before you entered on planet that outlines the path that you needed to help them, or they need to help you on. When it's like any sort of negative, dense, dark, lower vibration entity, etc., that's not the narrative. It's just not the narrative at all. It is more control based. There is guilt tripping, manipulation, those same like the same thing. If we're in an abusive relationship between humans, it's the same kind of concept. And I do always say, if you want to, work on connecting with guides in a very high vibration way, in a way that you're connecting with guides, like I mentioned earlier, where I build the different rooms where only those specific things are allowed to come in. Build yourself a room. This room is only for my guides to come in. Nothing but my guides can get into this room to talk to me. And that's it. It's your energy. You have so much more power than you realize. And when you make a boundary, that boundary can't be crossed. It's your boundary.
Yep.
And that's the same thing with any type of communication.
I tell people, if you believe what you say, that's the magic, you win. If you want a room that's only there for your spirit guides and you believe what you say, that's the magic, you win. That's how it works. I would say too, to add on that, I've noticed with more earthbound spirits, they will sometimes they'll work for their benefit, or they may be selfish. So if you're talking to a ghost essentially and they're like, no, you have to do this, or no, where are you going, like why wouldn't you stay, it, once again, it's not like every ghost is like that, but your spirit guides aren't going to be like, where are you going? Your spirit guides are going to be able to go with you and they're going to be able to come and go as they want. Whereas, I think
also,
about,
oftentimes ghosts are like angry you're talking with them, or like annoyed with you, even though like you can see them and like you're talking with them and they approached you. They're like annoyed with having to do that. Like that comes through a lot of the times when I channel ghosts, or they're like, why are you here? Like, I understand that you're like here, but like why? Like they are very much more of a, it's self-serving diction. Again, I'm a diction nerd, right? So it's very self-serving diction, or very much like having a conversation with another person that has no obligation to you or no connection to you or no love to you. It's just like a person you met at the grocery store. It's more of that energy with ghosts, as opposed to guides who are like, oh, okay, so when your sister said that when you were 8, how did that make you feel? That sounds nice. Which is like an entirely different, speech pattern and diction and dialogue that you would have.
yeah, I and I have to say too, like with ghosts, a lot of them have things that they're figuring out. Sometimes they're figuring out why they're still attached to a place. Why are they still attached to their body? Spirits or ghosts in particular, who physically look like how they passed, and say it's like violent or gory or something. That is an attachment to their physical self that either they're aware of and they're trying to scare somebody, or they're not aware of and they just think that they're still just roaming around. And there are some ghosts that I do believe are kind of having the second life principle. Like I've run into a number of them. Jimothy is one of them. His life was cut short. He had very few advancements. He woke back up. He's surrounded by all these other soldiers, and all of them are just kind of like, yeah, we're gonna hang around and have a good time and make sure that things are safe at the fort. And yeah, it's like we're gonna do something. And they've also helped one another to be calmer, to help each other with their trauma. Like it's a cool thing that's actually happened, especially when you consider how terrible the war was. Um, but you have ghosts that too, they stick around because they just enjoy it. And I found a lot of that in Wilmington because they're just like, oh, I love my house and I love what they're doing with it. Oh, did you see the new renovations the other day? Like there are spirits that are like that,
Mm-hmm.
though a lot of times it is what you're saying. Ghosts are kind of like, oh, you can see me? Great.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And
That's
sometimes
it.
too, especially this reminds me of the video you did where the lady's like, I'm going to the ocean, where it's just that like very small fragment of a soul that's left. Oftentimes, in my experience, those small fragments of souls, like those little tiny slivers that are now ghosts, they're usually just still processing a trauma. And when they're done processing it, they'll release from planet and go back to whole, etc. too. So there is that aspect too, where some ghosts are like, oh no, I'm a forest guardian now and I've evolved on a spiritual level and now I am here for reals forever. Like this is what my mission is. And then some are just like, well, I really wanted to stick around for another 100 years, so I did. You're just
Yep.
like, okay, do that.
Yeah. I've run into some of the more guardian spirits, whether in Wilmington, or I've run into some native spirits as well who are like, hey, these are my woods. They're my woods. And I make sure that things are okay. And I'm just like, you know what? That's great. Thank you so much for being here. Let me know if I can do something for you. Otherwise, I'm like, great, good,
Uh-huh.
bye.
Like, I'm gonna just walk on this path then. I won't step on the flowers. I'll be right here in this path only. Like,
Yeah. I
mhm,
connected with a spirit who like I want to say at least 600 years ago, like roughly. I didn't sit around and ask, be like, what year of our Lord are you from? You know, but
yeah.
I ran into him because there's some development happening out where I'm parked, where the bus is parked right now. And it makes me really sad because it's just they leveled all the trees and they didn't keep one of them. And they're just doing all kinds of stuff. And it's just not great for the environment, what they're doing. And one of these days, I saw these trees that had been down, and I saw a scuppernong, which is a local grape, basically. I saw a vine that had just fallen and had all these like little scuppernongs everywhere. So I was like, oh, well, there's a backyard that I'm in, and there's plenty of space. So I just went around and I collected all as many of these scuppernongs as I could. Like I have my little bundle, and like I'm going back, and right before I reach the wooded area around the bus, I run into this guy.
Mhm.
And it was just basically, he didn't speak to me, and certainly our language would be very different, but there was the acknowledgement of I was trying to do something. I recognized what I couldn't do, so I was trying to do something to keep the local. I'm still holding it as if I still have it. It's like they're here. Goodbye. Um, go back to the nature. Um, but it's interesting how that happens because he's still around, and even though the woods are mostly gone, he's still like, well, we're gonna see what happens.
Mhm.
But yeah, he was old, but he knew why he was there.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, that's one of the reasons I've lived in other places other than Tahoe, but I kept coming back is there's so many laws in place around destroying the woods. Like you cannot do it. And it made me feel much more safe because even when there's wildfires, like the amount of spiritual stuff that processes through me is like just exhausting. So like having at least stable woods feels so nice because then the guardians aren't as angry and then you can talk to more forest spirits and they have stuff to say and it's not all just like anger and destruction, which gets so exhausting.
Yeah, yeah. One thing, I have such a high respect for the Cape Fear River that's out here, because for when I have like channeled her, and I've worked with her before, and what I love about her, and I say her, she's like a female tenor. She's got this like really deep kind of, she's she's an old
I
river,
love that. That's beautiful.
though whenever I've connected with her, there's always this feeling of all of this is temporary. Like when I look at Wilmington and how it's been there since the late 1600s, even it's just
Mhm.
like, well, that wasn't always there, and at some point it will not be there anymore. And I was just like, okay, you're not worried. You're
Mhm.
doing fine.
Yeah, some people it's definitely like that. If you've ever channeled any of the mantis people who are like a higher dimensional being, but they live kind of inside of planets, which is a weird thing because it's up the layers of the cake, but physically below our feet, which is very hard to wrap our heads around sometimes. If you ever channeled them, they guard and honor the DNA structures of the beings on any given planet. And they're, every time I've ever channeled them, I've been like, oh my God, is everything okay? And they're like, you're fine. It'll be fine. Everything will come back. Just, try to care, be honoring of it, but everything's going to come back, whether you're here or not. And I was just kind of like, okay, like it's scary because obviously still have reverence. I'm in no way being like, just fuck it. Like, no, but still have all of that reverence. But the very higher dimensional beings, the higher energy beings, are far less concerned than we think that they probably should be, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think that also comes to, we're just a speck in the universe when we live within these bodies, like we worry so much because we're like, we've got like maybe 100 years, but things must be done. But when you've got thousands or like millions of years, it's very different.
Absolutely. I did want to answer this question. Yes, I believe you're posting this to YouTube later, right?
Yes. If
Okay.
I am, so long, I'm just going to say it, the Clock app will grant me the recording of this just like it absolutely should, and it will be on my YouTube later. So yes.
Yeah. I just wanted to make sure I saw that question. I was like, I think Rebekah is doing that, but I wanted to validate that for you guys.
Yeah, and I'll tag you on all of your platforms once I get it over there. I'm on Quirks and Conjure. That's my YouTube. It's also linked in my bio. And that's where I am. I have a question for you, and this is kind of circling back a little bit.
Okay,
so I feel like I know the answer to this because I took some of your like courses and classes. Though I feel like other people would appreciate to know this because I've been seeing a few questions on my end talking about, hey, I blocked myself. What's a way that I can start to open that up?
Yeah. That's like one of my favorite questions. So, couple different things, and I'm going to share this analogy, and many of you probably heard it. If you haven't ever seen me, maybe you haven't heard it, but it's the best analogy ever. It was given to me by my guides. Props to them. So basically, we're all born with this flowing magical river inside of us, right? Like we all have some degree of this flowing river. It might be kind of smaller, it might be raging, it might be blocked, dammed up a little bit, it might be a trickle, whatever it is, but we have it. Now, from the moment we're born, we're pretty much doing everything humanly possible to pollute and dam up this river that we can, because that is what Earth life does, right? So if you have a traumatic experience, you chuck in a bunch of boulders. If you have dense emotions come up on, like fear or anger, those end up, plastic bags into your river. And different things like that. Oh, is it lagging? Am I moving? Okay, I'm kind of okay.
Oh, you're fine. I don't know if I am, but you're fine.
Sorry, I just saw like a bunch of people say it's lagging, so sorry. Oh. It's really windy. So but yeah, so plastic baggies, beavers, everything goes into your river with all these different experiences.
Oh no, I lost Emily. Well, while I am waiting for her to come back, thanks again for everybody who's been joining. Hopefully she will be coming back very shortly. Oh, there she is. Oh, maybe not. Maybe not. And I am trying to get to some of your questions because I value all of them and I think they're really good questions. But, clearly she and I have some good friendship chemistry. So we're very much like, hey, what about this? Have you thought about this? I'm making my camera move. Now it's lagging for me. Oh no. There she is. Hey, the last thing I heard was plastic baggies in your river of connection.
Okay, so we have this river and we have all of these different experiences throughout our life, whether that's trauma or dense emotions, or maybe it's even ancestral blocks or limiting beliefs you pick up from other people. Those are all just garbage that fills your river, right? Those are the things that go in that jam up your magic and jam up your psychic abilities and jam up your opening. So in order to start really opening and accessing those psychic abilities, accessing that magical river, you have to start unpolluting it. And there's a ton of different ways to do this. So there's no one clear answer, but the clearest answer I always give is do whatever feels best for you, not whatever you think you should be doing, not You never should all over yourself. It's never helpful. But do what feels best to you to start removing those things from your river. So if you're like, oh, I definitely have some limiting beliefs, amazing. What do you think those blocks are? Like literally writing that at the top of the page of like, what are my limiting beliefs? And just start writing those down. Another great place I always tell people to start is start with your fears, because fears always lead back to limiting beliefs and blocks and stuff that's jammed up in our river. So making a fear list, like literally listing out stuff that you're afraid of. Start with big, broad things like house fires, getting kidnapped, like things that everyone is afraid of, and then narrow it down. Do it over the course of multiple days. Be really kind with yourself. But once you've narrowed those fears down, then you actually have ways you can work on them because you've listed them out and you can see them and you can start navigating them. You can do things like energetic block pulling. There's lots of resources out there. That's a lot of stuff I teach in my course because it's more than I can talk about on a live. It's a pretty longer process. Rebekah's taken it. Or you can just quite literally be like, okay, I'm going to write the opposite of that fear statement next to it. And I'm going to start using that statement as a mantra every day until my energy shifts. That's possible too. But the more you clear out the stuff from your river, the more you resolve things, the more you get to know yourself, the easier it's going to be for you to tune in. The other big hack there is it needs to be fun or it's not going to be effective. And I'm not saying that like, yay, healing, great, I cried all day. That's not what I'm talking about with fun. Obviously, crying all day is not super fun, but the act of what you accomplish, if that feels fun to you, awesome. If playing with tarot cards feels fun to you, awesome. If experiencing, past life regression, if you want to get to know your past lives, if that seems like something that's really aligned with, awesome, because it feels like fun to you. So the things that feel fun need to be the things that you're putting your energy towards. Because oftentimes, especially in the spiritual community, especially here on TikTok, everyone expects you to know everything about everything all of the time immediately, and that's impossible. So it has to be, well, these things feel fun for me to play with, and I'm going to read a book on this topic because it feels fun, and start putting your energy into those places because those are the places you belong in anyway, and that's what your energy is already going towards. And then, of course, the next step would be to like, how do you sense energy? Start paying attention. And that's how you're going to open it up more, because if you figure out how you're sensing the energy, you can actively use that sense when you want to. And when you're like, okay, I want to talk to my guide. I know that I'm really strong with listening to things. Like music speaks to me a lot. I get, I've heard my name called before, those kind of things. All right, well, then I'm going to use hearing what to talk to my guide. Versus I know guided meditations visually are my jam. I've seen images. I have leftover images from dreams a lot of times that coordinate to things later on. If I say picture red apple, I can see the shiniest, juiciest red apple. It's super simple for me. Clairvoyance, try that. Try it with seeing. Really discern what your energy vibes with and then use that.
Yes.
So that's a long answer to your small question.
No, that was perfect. And I want to bring attention to two things in particular, because some people have already said it on my chat, but it's exactly what I'm thinking. Yes, this is mental health. This is,
100%.
And you know what? For some people, if you need to go to a counselor or a therapist or a psychological professional to say, hey, I need help figuring out my fears, or to say, hey, I am so afraid of this thing, I can't even break it apart. Yes, like spiritual health and mental health are right up. Like when I started to open up the most, and I always tell this to people, it's because I looked at my life and I said, okay, where am I not healthy? Oh, I feel like I can't think and I have a lot of anxiety and depression. What am I going to do about it? I'm going to see somebody about it because I recognize my limitations for myself right now. And that's the thing. If writing out a list of fears, because I saw some people, they were like, whoa, I don't know if I can write out that list. It's okay to look at it that way, so long as you're looking to take steps to get to that place or to work with somebody to be aware of them. Because when you're aware of them, then you can recognize them, acknowledge them, and let them go.
Yeah, or you can even just start with one fear. It doesn't have to be a whole list. And usually, like when I do courses and stuff, we build up to the fear list. It's not like dive in all of your fears, but like start with one fear, write down what it is, write down what it would look like to not have it, and then work towards that. It can be very simple. It doesn't have to be super expansive in depth, but that's an energetic shift because you acknowledge what it would look like to not have it. Then you can acknowledge steps it would take to get to this actual destination that you've established energetically. And the universe will support you, and your guides will support you. But it doesn't have to be that big thing. And yeah, absolutely, go to therapy or read a book or whatever feels good for you. Like I have an amazing therapist. therapy's great. Sometimes I don't have one there because I'm out of that space where I'm like, I don't think I need therapy to work on this. Sometimes it's purely energetic block pulling for me. Like, it's a whole variety, and that's okay. That's how we heal. We didn't get all of the blocks in our river from a singular occurrence one time. So we can't heal all of the stuff in our river from a singular occurrence one time. It is a process.
Yeah. And I'll say too, how you speak about yourself. I what was it? I said something about it the other day. I was like, the words you use are your reality.
Mm-hmm.
So, and it's not to say like, if you're sad and then sit there and be like, I'm happy, and like, it's not to say
Yeah.
that. It's, if you believe in your words, you make them true, whether it's like literally right now or it's sending that out and pulling that future towards you. So that's the thing. I see some people in my comments being like, I'm blocked, I'm blocked, I'm blocked. Okay, well,
That's a
like, this
narrative.
is something that, yeah, that how do you can still acknowledge that you're trying to get this flow going, but once again, it's the
Mm-hmm.
words that you use. How can you still have that acknowledgement but use different lingo? And I know you talk about
Yeah.
this in your courses. So what's something, if
Yeah.
somebody were to say, I like
Well, first of
a
all,
go-to block, yeah.
the term I am blocked is inherently a limiting belief. So you don't want to keep sitting there like, I am blocked, I am blocked. You're just reinforcing this limiting belief. I am currently working through my blocks. That gives you a flow. It gives you an action. It acknowledges the fact that, yeah, sure, you have these things you're working through, but you're currently working through them. It gives you more agency and more authority over exactly what it is that you're releasing or navigating.
Yeah. And I'll
So,
circle back to, I say that a lot with my clairvoyance and my clairaudience.
yeah.
I used to say, oh, I've never had clairaudience, therefore I don't know if I can even do it. Now I'm saying I'm working on my clairaudience. And some days it's, I get accents and like diction and, very specific words. And some days it's more of the idea. So,
Yeah.
but that's where I use other clair senses. And I mention this to people when I'm doing my consultations. I'll use my other clair senses to be like, okay, well, that word didn't come through as clearly. However, the implication that I'm getting from the emotive sense of what's happening right now is saying this to me. So
Yeah.
just because maybe you're working on one of your clair senses, that doesn't mean that you're just completely blocked. That means perhaps you need to, give yourself grace. My therapist is always like, Rebekah, give yourself grace, like, forgive yourself. So
Mm-hmm.
maybe give yourself grace and be like, well, I'm feeling something else that's still legitimate, that is still doing the reading essentially, and still being able to properly channel. If that makes
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah. Totally. Absolutely. Yeah. And it can be a process. And I like that energy. Like, it's allowed to be a process. We're okay to do that. Oh, it's people are saying it's lagging. I'm still seeing you, sensing you're okay. Like, you seem you're coming through, but sorry everybody if it's lagging. Don't know. Internet's been funky. We're going into Mercury retrograde. Warning in advance. Um,
Again, it's happening again. Well,
yeah,
it's happened a lot of times, and it doesn't have to be bad. That's a limiting belief that Mercury in retrograde is bad. No, it's different. It's just a different way of thinking. That's what that,
yeah. It's
and
about.
that's a perfect go.
I think it's like the 14th or 15th of this month we go into Mercury retrograde, so we're like starting to enter shadow phase. So if technology is starting to be wonky for you, that's why.
Yeah, but what a great time to reanalyze what is technology to you? When you're waiting for it to buffer and you're just like, wow, why? Like, what a great time to
Yeah,
be in the present and be like, cool, noted, great.
yeah. There's always a reason. If you always ask why it's happening, it helps so much. One question I did want to touch on, because I've seen it asked a couple times, and it's a little bit off topic, but like what it means to have energy infused writing. Just since your book has a lot of energy infused and activation into it, and obviously that's what I help people with as well. So I wanted to make sure I touched on that really quick. It's essentially choosing the vibration and energy you're putting into the writing so that the reader will therefore get that activation out of it in a really simple sense. We do have a podcast episode coming out about this week on Thursday, so I wanted to touch on that. But I mean, what's been your experience, I guess, with that, like energy, Rebekah? Like, how do you feel about energetically infused writing?
Wow. It's interesting.
Very
I,
big question, I guess.
I, it's a lot easier to write when the situation didn't happen to me personally. I'll say that, because things will come up where I'll be like, wow, now I get to think about it and handle it. Great. And now, with Rupert being involved, I'm like, great. Now, because remember, Rupert was going to visit you. And then, like, literally that night, we just like
Yeah.
uncovered, like, we just ripped off the band aid and we were like, all right, this is, we're talking about this right now.
The funniest part about that is you were like, Rupert's coming, Rupert's coming. I was like, I don't think he's going to come. Like, something feels weird in the energy today. And then you messaged me, you're like, I don't think he can come. I was like, I know, it's fine. Like, you're good.
There was a part of me that was like, she knows. I know that she knows. I don't know how she knows,
Totally
but she
knew.
knows. What is it? I texted you. I was like, wow, it's like you're psychic or something.
Yeah. And I was like, you're fine. Don't worry about it. He can come visit whenever he'd like to come visit, but it doesn't have to be today. Anyway,
Oh my
continue.
goodness.
I just wanted to point that out. It's hilarious.
Yeah, no, that's great. So I'll backtrack a little bit. There's the channeling, because I put another book on hiatus and I'm going to get back to it at some point. And that was the original book that I proposed to your writing program. And that's something that's been ingrained, and I channeled that in, and I was working with the muse, and she's still around. She's still chill, like she's got all this time. So she's just kind of like, yeah, you'll come back. And I'm like, great. Thank you for that. So with that, it was really just like receiving. I would just like get pictures, and just once again, the clearer the channel, the more I was just able to be like, blah, 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 like this is happening. And that's exactly what you teach in your program. The difference with writing, it's primarily autobiographical, but you'll find it in the fiction section of your bookstore, because memory has flaws to it. I mean, that's just the reality. Like, I can sit here and like be like, oh, this is exactly what I remember. Even Rupert, he can be like, this is what I remember. But even though I'm only looking back 3 years and he's looking back almost 300, there's space in between. So with that, it's interesting, like when talking with him, because part of the perspective of the book is going to be from his perspective of when he got off the ship as a soldier in Wilmington and all the things that he saw. So with him, he'll just send me pictures. And so what I'm doing is I'm just writing down all of the pictures. The difference is, because it's something that happened to him and my previous past life as extension, sometimes the pictures also come with really heavy emotions. So I get to be there and I'm like, I'm writing the picture. Why is this happening? And it's good to get out there, but still there's like okay.
Yeah. Well, that can happen too. Like, even I'm currently writing it's a historical fantasy, but it's because it can't be a biography, because again, I'm tuning in and channeling the woman whose story this is, and I'm talking to her about it. And she did live in ancient Rome, but sometimes she shows me very emotional pictures and I'm like, holy shit, I am now crying. Thank you for that, Lo. I really appreciated it. It helped with the story, but now I'm really, really sad. Thanks for that energy. But it's really activating for the reader too, which is kind of the whole point too, is like, stories are the way that we heal the world. Stories are the way we change the world. Stories have always been that way. And so if we put more intention and consciousness around the energy we're programming our stories that we write or our stories that we tell, then that's the energy that the people are going to get from. And if their vibration raises, all the people around them vibration raises too. And it's this crazy big spiderweb effect that just keeps going and going and going and going from there. But it's powerful. It's real magic, and words have such power. And so that's energy infused writing for you. It's just this incredible like written magic. It's thoughts from someone else that we each get to view, and then have those in turn activate us and open us up to higher vibrations. But again, I dive into it intensely on The Alchemist Inkwell. It comes out on Thursday, so you guys want to check that one. But that's like a base question. I saw that asked a couple times.
I'm getting a few questions. So yeah, your podcast goes into more in depth on that. Also, for those of you who are asking, the program that I was a part of, that is the Forgotten Storytellers. And when's your next session for that? Are you taking submissions yet for that?
Yeah, so we're actually currently open for Forgotten Storyteller pitches. which if you have a messy novel idea that you'd love to see be a book, but you haven't really been able to do that before, you can shoot us. The link is in my bio on my TikTok. But you can just shoot us your messy pitch, and we are open currently for at least the next 2 weeks for submissions.
Oh, that's so exciting. I'm excited for your next group. I'm like, yes, do it, do the thing. And this is for, because I remember with my group, we had some people who were already published authors, and then we had some people who were not published authors. And then me, for very long, I was a dabbler, and I like was writing fan fiction, and I'm never going to tell anybody what my name was. I just plant that in there. People are like, what? Anywho, but it helped me practice, and that's the point. So, but I would say, and this is something you say too, and I actually shared one of your videos talking about, do you know if talking with a psychic, a channeler, a medium is right for you? I would say for this program too, what it comes down to is, how are you feeling about it? You know, like, do you feel like you vibe with, you know, like you, Crystal Lynn, do you feel like there's just something in the universe that says, hey, you should do this? And that extends to any kind, I mean, honestly, any kind of person, whether business, you know, whatever, but it certainly extends to who you're going to do a reading with. Like, I know if somebody gets like on a video call with me and we just start talking from the gate and it is just a natural conversation, I'm already like, okay, we're warming up. I'm already starting to feel, you know, like guides tuning in, that kind of thing. It's going to be good. So whenever you're kind of making a decision like that, who to work with, I think the best question is like, will you vibe with them? Do you think like, oh yeah, I could sit down and have a coffee with this person? I think that's what works. And that was something you talked about.
It's so essential. And like, that is a huge thing. If you're ever like, how do I know the psychic is real? Or how do I know that this is the one I should pick? Or anything like that. Like, does your energy jive with them? Are you feeling good about it? Then go with that. Because no matter what, you're going to get something out of the interaction, if that's the case. And same thing with this type of program, etc. It's the same sort of feeling. A really simple, like, non-pressure way of kind of testing this out is to go to like Udemy or places where courses are offered for less expense, like very simple, $10 courses or something like that, and go through and see which ones feel good. Like, just feel good. You can take one and see if that is, did feel good, see what you got out of it, like those kind of things. Even if it's nothing to do with psychic anything, it just helps you to test that sense and test that trust and that like energetic resonance that you have with something, and then act upon it in a way that feels very safe and very controlled. And that can be really, really beneficial. Because again, applying something like this program, which is, you're writing a book, if that feels like it's time, then awesome, lean into that. If you want a reading from Rebekah, or if you're feeling more aligned with someone else or me or whoever, it doesn't matter. If that feels aligned with you, amazing, lean into that, because it's all based on your energetic resonance. 100%.
Yep. And speaking of which, since I've kept you over an hour, what are ways, like, if somebody was like, oh my goodness, I love Emily, maybe they're like, I don't know if I'm a writer, but like, I want to be read by Emily, like, how would they do that? What are all the things that you do?
Totally. I do many different things. So I have multiple different courses, video courses that are self-led, but they are full of activations. They're guided. They're very step-by-step, as Rebekah said. Like, they're very easy to follow, very user-friendly. That's my whole deal. And so I have a bunch of those. I also do readings. They are booked out kind of far in advance, so just want to warn everybody about that. But I do offer them, and they're called soul readings for 30 minutes or an hour. We do everything from block pulling to whatever you'd like to focus on, to whatever your guides tell me in that reading space. So very aligned. Also, of course, like I said, the Forgotten Storytellers program is open right now. I also have the podcast. All of the different stuff, though, is listed on my website. So that's emilydexterauthor.com. Also, my handle is @likerofwords on everything. So it's on TikTok, on Instagram, on Twitter. I only have this one account. It's @likerofwords. That's it. Any other account is not real and not me. I don't offer you readings in DMs, nor do I do random contests you didn't enter and give you readings that way. Not me. For anyone who is feeling the sting of that, the specifically Instagram stuff won't take them down for some obscene reason, and I don't know what it is. I can't tell you the amount of times we've recorded. I know Rebekah suffers the same thing, so this is my plug for her too. Liker of Words is my only account. That's it.
Yep. Yep.
But yeah, Emily Dexter author, or find me at that handle.
Excellent. Also, that is so exciting that you're booked out so far. I'm so happy for you. And
You
yeah, with the
too.
yeah, that is exciting for me. I know for consultations, because I offer what I call mediumship led consultations. So it's part I dive into the spiritual that's going around. I connect with guides, past loved ones, sometimes the occasional past animal or spirit guide animal or whatever. But I also work on a more like earthbound level. If you're having a haunting, if you want to talk in a safe space with something that you were terrified of, and actually create ways to have a cleansing that makes you feel good based in a belief system that you adhere to, those are the kinds of things. That's why it's part mediumship, but it's also part consultation. It is a conversation. I want everybody to walk away feeling like they can do things on their own, and they can connect on their own, and also have safety measures in place on their own. So those are the consultations. I also do what I'm calling stone dowsing, which is super exciting. It's the only kind of divination that I do, and that's another thing. The scammers, when they're like, "Oh, here's a tarot reading," I'm like, I don't know how to read tarot because it never called to me, and it's fine that it calls to other people, but I like my rocks and sticks and bottled water that I use to do readings. So I'm
Yeah.
gonna use those. I literally have bottles of different water.
I love that you highlight you want everyone to leave being able to do stuff for themselves. I feel the same about my readings. Like, I want you to have empowered techniques to open up and use your psychic abilities more in your day-to-day life. People will be like, oh, can I have another reading? I'm like, in 6 months and not sooner, because you need to have 6 months of doing your own stuff and letting you experiencing your energetic stuff. And then if you want to come back and regroup with me, you can. Same reason is like the whole reason I do all of this is to empower people in their own magic, period. Because everyone's magic, and if everyone was more magical and honored it more of the time, everyone's life would be better, right? So like, let's do that.
Yeah, I absolutely relate to that. There's some people, and these are people who I jive with too, who are like, well, can I circle back in a month? Can you talk to this person for me again? And I'm like, we talked about all the ways that you can talk to this person, and I would love to talk to you again, but I'm glad that there's a bit of buffer time as well, because it takes time, it takes growth, and it takes dedication, but it's certainly possible. And that's the thing. I don't, in a perfect world, people like us wouldn't be doing any kinds of readings because everybody would be able to do it for themselves. But I understand, like, both of us, our paths have to do with inspiring others and letting people know that they have the tools that they need in order to do the things that they want. It's just a matter of figuring out what those are and kind of tailoring them, and then being like, all right, fly, be free, see how it goes, okay? That kind of thing.
This has been super fun. Also, happy new moon, a day late.
Yay! I hope it's been good for you. I've had some things come about even just in the past day that I was like, this is exciting. And then I was like, oh, I'm talking to Emily tonight. It must be a good sign. I don't know how they're connected, but it seems like good things happen when I talk to you. So
well, no, I was just gonna say we should do these again. Like, we should do joint lives, like maybe monthly or something. That'd be fun.
Yes. Okay, I'm for it. We will talk
about that.
What do you guys
think? Do you guys think we should? Because we would love to.
Yeah, we're like, what? Do you like us?
Do you want us to talk at you some more? Yeah.
I'm getting some questions. Yeses. Thanks, everybody.
Okay. Awesome.
Oh, goodness.
Oh, this has been great. Well,
yes.
I hope it's later for you. Like, only for me, it's only like 4 o'clock, but
you still have daylight to discover.
I know, even though it's like 6 foot buried in snow daylight, so it's really like peeking through a little window.
Yeah, you enjoy that. I'll let you have it. It sounds great. I'm gonna sit here in my coastal town and be like, if it snows, everybody closes everything down because we don't know how to handle like that much. So
no. Awesome. Well, I'm gonna skedaddle. Everyone, if you have other questions, feel free to ask them on videos and stuff, and I'll respond to them there. But
yep. And this recording will be up on my YouTube later. That's Quirks and Conjure. See ya. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.